Our group members are Ryan Kwan, Jeannie Lee, Samantha Lee, and Mike Liao. In this project, our group will be discussing the topic of changing gender norms in the 1920s. We will be discussing our argument that the introduction of new ideas on suffrage, gender equality, and birth control for women sparked conflict and challenged the traditional patriarchal ideas that women did not possess the ability to become independent from men. During the 1800s in America, women began to fight for the suffrages and challenge patriarchal norms, which caused conflict between men and women. At the time, women had little to no rights. They were not that different from African slaves. Women couldn't get jobs, marry who they wanted, and most unfortunately, they couldn't vote. However, in the article American History written by James Newman, as many social reforms such as anti-slavery movements began to occur, many women came to see through their social work the importance of gaining the right to vote, not because women viewed themselves as equal to men, but precisely because they were different from men. Women wanted the right to vote because women are weak and powerless. They are different from those strong, powerful men. Women wanted to protect themselves and have a greater voice in the government. However, many men were opposed to these actions, because men believed that women are naive and too weak to control their right to vote. In this patriarchal society during the 1800s in America, men controlled everything in their family, in the government, and even in society. However, women stepped up and challenged against this traditional thinking that men should control everything. Women formed the American Women's Suffrage Association and the National Women's Suffrage Association. Women held speeches and conventions throughout the United States and eventually gained a large influence and support.
On September 18, 1922, the National Council of the Women's Party argued that the only way to achieve gender equality was to participate in public affairs and integrate themselves into society. Furious at how women's services and earnings belong to her husband and how married women are classed with children and insane, they encouraged women to rid the stereotypical view of inferiority. It showed how the men dominated the household and dictated women's actions. The women did not want to always belong to their husbands. They wanted to be independent, and they wanted to live the life of independence promoted by the flappers. And the flappers portrayed the modern life of women through cutting their hair, putting on excessive makeup, and wearing revealing clothing.
During the 1920s, the usage of birth control also became a huge controversy. Margaret Sanger was one of the women who argued for the usage of birth control. The leader of the birth control movement grew up observing the strenuous efforts of her mother to raise 11 children, and witnessed the death of a mother from childbirth because she was not given enough information on birth control. In Women and Birth Control, Sanger states that there is the need for the practice of birth control. A woman will recognize the necessity of spacing her children and of recuperating her full strength and psychic well-being after the birth of one child. Drawing from her negative experiences with childbirth, Sanger wants birth control to be used to allow women the choice of a healthy life without the difficulties of raising too many children at the same time. Margaret Sanger's argument promoted women's sexual independence and their right to control when they had children, which opposed the patriarchal society that wanted to limit this right.
The topic of women's suffrage has become more widely accepted today than it was when the 19th Amendment allowing women to vote was passed. Ever since women won the right to vote, they make up about half of the workforce and 19.3% of the seats in the U.S. Congress, which is a huge improvement from the past. Women are becoming more independent and joining the workforce instead of staying at home and relying on the men to do all the work. In Congress, there has been a steady increase of representation of women from when women gained the right to vote. It shows the increase of independent women as they do not have to rely on men to run the government for them and can have a voice in the government and its affairs. The success of gaining suffrage has become a reason why women are demanding equal wages, rights, and opportunities and trying to close the gender gap between men and women.
From the 1920s to modern times, protests against inequality changed drastically. It changed from the flappers demonstrating independence along the everyday streets with cut hair and more revealing clothing, to modern stars such as Queen Bee supporting feminism at their concerts and interviews. In a rare interview between Elle magazine and Beyoncé, she said that the reason of putting the definition was to give clarity to the true meaning of feminism, and that a feminist is someone who believes in equal rights for women and men. She even addresses the wage gap, stating that why should a daughter earn 75 cents when she deserves $1, and appeals to anyone with kids by making this concept seem more realistic, opposed to a celebrity complaining about the stardom life. This interview highlights how even though feminism is a much more widespread topic today, it still isn't a topic everyone is familiar with because sexist people think the main goal is to make women more powerful than men. Overall, The change from 1920s to the modern times show progression of eradicating the inequality in society.
So how has Margaret Sanger played a role in today's current issues? Well, birth control also remains a huge issue in the religious world. For instance, the Catholic Church deeply opposes birth control. When asked about how to handle the deadly Zika disease that has been causing birth defects, Pope Francis, the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church, states that abortion is an evil in and of itself. On the other hand, avoiding pregnancy is not an absolute evil. In certain cases, as this one, it was clear. Although his statement is ambiguous, Pope Francis suggests that birth control is permissible if it is used to help the health of the mother and her children. Then, we can also see how Sanger's emphasis on the health of the mother has played a role in current viewpoints today on birth control. Different interpretations of this quote have made many focus on how to solve the Zika virus problem, with many pointing to birth control as the solution. However, it is stated that the Vatican released a statement saying that it was concerned by the call from international leaders to increase access to abortion. Here, we can see how modern ideals, which encouraged the Church to relax on its strict opposition to birth control, challenged the traditional Catholic teachings, which have caused conflict and concern in the Vatican. Clearly, birth control and women's sexual freedom have remained a prominent issue today.
All these ideas have helped the traditional patriarchal society progress into the modern society we have today. Overall, the introduction to new ideas on suffrage, birth control, and equal rights have influences on traditional gender norms and created some controversies that still remains today.